What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a super-sized Nerdwide podcast. It's episode 135. We've got so many things to talk about. We got to catch up on things, some news to come as well for the next couple of weeks. But before we get there, I'm your host, Tyler Haynes, with my good friend and co-host who makes the best deviled eggs, Mr. Chris Rivers.
I try.
Dude, I've been eating leftover food all day today. And I'm feeling really bloated. Went to an event today. So we were out. We didn't do an episode last week because I could not speak. Whatever sinus issues, like where the weather's just changing so much, is going around. I could not speak. Like I would sound like a child going through puberty again. And I was like, yes. And it's just, I couldn't, there's no way I could have done it. But we're back this week, though.
Good, though.
Yes,
Good.
Listen.
Most of us only get to experience that for once in life.
Yeah, I wasn't excited to experience it again. But we did. We adapted. Listen, we've got the series finale of Doom Patrol to talk about. The potentially series finale of Loki season 2 to talk about, and then Goosebumps. 5 episodes to catch up on it, and then of course what we've been going through with the Invincible series. Quick housekeeping before we jump into all that. This is going to be a giant episode, so strap in and sit down and get ready for all the recaps. Some of these I'll try to go through a little bit quicker, like Goosebumps, like I'll try to get through the fluff of it. But where like Doom Patrol and Loki, there's some heavy stuff in there that, of course, finales and things like that we have to talk about and get through. We're also reviewing The Marvels. Yes, right here, The Marvels. We saw it 2 weeks ago. Of course, that was the week that because we went Thursday night. That Friday is when I could not speak anymore. And then it lasted all weekend long until I think Tuesday of this week. I was finally back to my normal self. So we've got all of that to talk about. We've got Christmas episodes coming up soon. So starting next week, we will be doing the Santa Clauses. There's already 3 episodes out, only 30 minutes each. So there should be 4 episodes out. We'll talk about it next week. We're going to do a big catch-up episode next week. There's just all the news and things. The strike is over. There's Superman and Lois. Season 4 is it. They're done. So we got to talk about that. All of the new trailers and things from Marvel and stuff. There's a whole lot to talk about, so we're just gonna do that then. But I think that's pretty much it for housekeeping. I mean, that was a rundown of it all. It's gonna be things will start getting back to normal in 2 weeks, technically, and then we have our movie, TV, and game of the year discussions in a couple of weeks, which is no, we got Christmas stuff, but then we'll get back to normal and then do our game of the year stuff or of the years, and which I'm really excited about because this is the first year, which we've been 3 years doing this. This is the first year from the very first week I've kept track of all of our scores on our TV shows, movies. So all from the Pale Blue Eye on, I've got them all in the phone.
I love that movie.
Oh, dude, that was a good movie.
And just touching on the beginning of next year, of course, before we started recording, we mentioned that Echo it'll drop in January, TVMA.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of my favorite parts of the year for the podcast, we started this, I believe, this past year, or technically this calendar year, will be our viewing and reviewing of the Oscar nominees for Best Picture.
Yes. I forgot all about that. Which it might be a light year though. Well, they'll still do as many, but with the strikes and everything going on, it might be a light year. So Oppenheimer is for sure going to be on there.
I wonder if Barbie gets nominated just because it was such a...
That's a good question. Oh, I forgot that we did that. That's very exciting.
Now, and for those that weren't here this year for that, what we usually do is if we've already seen it, we don't prioritize it. So,
yeah, we'll see if anything we've watched is nominated for Best Picture. So, I mean,
we had 1 or 2 last year.
Yeah. Oh, Avatar, which was I'm glad I watched maybe 30 minutes of that and couldn't get into it. I was like, it's lost its taste for me. Okay, let's get into it though. Of course, the past 2 or 3 weeks we talked about it a little bit on the last episode, but Matthew Perry dying, unfortunately, sudden and that from what I've read and things like that, it wasn't intentional. It wasn't. It was just a kind of freak accident kind of thing. It's from what I've seen.
So, with your nursing background, let me ask you this, because I have heard that some people think a medication he was on may not have mixed well with him being in the hot tub.
Yep.
So that's a possibility. I initially just thought maybe with all the addiction issues over the years and the surgeries he went through from that maybe his heart just gave out.
Yeah. That's from what I heard like early on. I haven't like really researched more into it, but of course if it would have broke the news if something like the foul play, major things like that. But from what I initially read, that like, he was in the hot tub and had a heart attack and essentially died in the hot tub. But I'm right there with you. It could be a combination of the medications and all the surgeries and everything. It's hard to say I'm done. But it's been a rough couple of weeks. Of course, all his co-stars, Jennifer Aniston, Courtney Cox, Matthew LeBlanc, are all writing their I don't know, letters to him, I guess, and tributes and stuff like that. And it's just been it's been a rough one. But
yeah, they said it's not Jennifer Aniston off her feet the hardest because they were closest.
Yeah.
Also, though, what made me think it was probably just his heart giving out was he had a regular pickleball game with somebody. And they said all week long he had not been able to play as long. He would get tired.
That definitely a heart issue. And if guys, if you start noticing something like that, go to your doctor, because that's not, if something's not normal and how you normally are, then go get it checked out. But other than that, Chris, have you watched anything crazy TV wise these past couple of weeks?
Not crazy, but I mean his death prompted me to go back and start a binge of Friends. So I'm in the middle of season 3 now.
So good, man. It's one of those shows that someone put up on TikTok a couple years back that if you took the laugh track out, Ross is creepy, like borderline psycho creepy. It cracked. Like I can't think of that show anymore without watching it that way. I think TV wise, I started King of Queens, a little known show. No one's really watched it, so it's a little indie show. I think on episode 3 or 4. I've seen episodes here or there. It's one of those. It is. They're the two main James, Kevin James, I forget, Leah Romini. Hilarious. Their chemistry together is some of the best. Even on this early season when they were first starting to get together, it's still very good.
He had that second show of his and had a different co-star, and they let her go to bring Leah Remini in.
Can you blame them?
I mean, it was kind of...
kind
of a harsh way to do things. But
that's showbiz, baby.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think that's as far as TV goes. Obviously, a lot of sports. Big Brother's over. That part of my life is done for the year. Longest season ever, with 100 days. My guy Jag won, which I was okay with him or Matt winning from the very get-go. That was who I wanted to win, and they're the last two left. So
I have no idea what you just said.
I know it's for all my reality heads out there, they know they're picking up what I'm throwing down. Well, listen, that's not what we're here to talk about. I'm ready. Let's get into the series finale of Doom Patrol, and we are putting all the spoiler stuff up. We are going to Geek Girl Authority again by Melody McCune for the recap of Doom Patrol. Let's see. We open with Immortus levitating in the Cloverton Theater, the massive portal swirling before her. Suddenly, Jane, Vic, Cliff, Laura, and Larry return to the surface after their trip through the time streams. Immortus looms before them, and the ravenous werebutts are on the other side of the theater's doors. Terrified, Laura transforms into a bird and flies away. Our heroes battle it out without her against Immortus, who's, a god, so it doesn't really go well for them. However, Vic has a fancy new flaming sword. Jay now possesses all the abilities of Kay's other alters, naming herself Kaleidoscope. For example, she can boost her super speed and can shoot fire out of her hands. Let's see, but this author says her favorite is the return of Silvertongue's unique powers. Jane says F you and the words turn into sharp blades, hurling throughout the theater. Love that. I forgot a lot of Jane's superpowers because we haven't seen them this whole season because the underground's been on the fritz. So let's see. Unfortunately, Immortus deflects the attack, redirecting the FU to the doors, which burst the doors open from the impact and the werebutts flood the theater. Meanwhile, Laura returns to Rita's bedside. Rita looks more aged than before. She's also considerably weaker. Laura confesses she's afraid of bailing on her friends again. She's falling into her old habits. Rita reassures her that she's not leaving the Doom Patrol high and dry. Why? Because Laura knows Rita will hold her accountable. Laura helps Rita into her wheelchair as they head back towards the Cloverton Theater. Very good scene between the two here. And this is a big episode of our culmination of what the whole series and this season has been. I mean, we get a lot of good moments, which one we'll talk about towards the end, had a pretty good emotional impact on me. Next, we see Dr. Margaret and Nicholas barge into the theater while singing Shapoopy. If you recall, the Werebutts performed this number in the season 4 premiere. Sure enough, the other Werebutts catch on and start singing together. Immortus isn't a fan, though. She demands to be the center of all the attention. So she bursts into a song of her own, belting out one of the tunes from the musical based on the Doom Patrol. The Werebutts and Dr. Margaret join Immortus. Even Cliff starts singing along. Cliff was phenomenal this episode. It just was so funny just singing and doing it with everybody. Seizing this opportunity that Immortus distracting provides, our gang discreetly leaves the theater during the show. Suddenly, Immortus releases a burst of rainbow color engulfing the theater. The gang watches outside as the theater just simply vanishes. Laura and Rita arrive right as Immortus' disappearing act takes effect. Hey, this is the Doom Patrol. We've learned that nothing makes sense in truth be told. That's why we love it. Couldn't have said it better myself. Then our heroes have breakfast together the next morning. Even Rita is downstairs eating. Vic shows the crew his new metal tattoos on his updated cyborg armor. One of them is dedicated to the Doom Patrol. Jane reveals that all her alters are now one person. In fact, it's not just Jane on the surface. The whole underground is topside. Jane realizes she doesn't want to be called Jane anymore. The word that comes to mind is kaleidoscope. But she does settle on K, which is her main personality. Larry, being our favorite wet blanket, wonders why it was so easy to defeat a god and a pack of werewolf butts. Everyone else encourages him not to overthink it. When life hands you a pass, you take it. Rita decides to leave for her room to try on her superhero outfit. She wants to see if it still fits. Laura offers to assist her. However, Rita insists she's still nimble enough to dress herself. She wheels herself away from the table with Niles' wheelchair. Next, Immortus knocks on the front door. She's a bona fide star, having performed in shows for thousands of years alongside her werebutt companions. Doom Patrol, you know? I mean, there's no other way to explain that. They've been a great asset to her. Sure, she was only gone maybe an hour in the real world, but time runs differently in the time stream. As a token of her gratitude, the werebutts, Immortus offers our heroes something they've needed this whole time, their longevity back. She orders them to consume her toenails. Yes, you heard that right. Her toenails, which will restore all their youth. Kay, Cliff, and Larry immediately eat the toenails. Of course, Kay looks significantly younger. They save a toenail for Rita. Before Immortus departs, she gives Cliff a crystal necklace, claiming it'll come in handy later. Suddenly, they hear Laura scream. Unfortunately, Rita has passed away. We see Larry that is the most distraught. Everyone decides unanimously to crash the afterlife to save Rita. Larry heads downstairs to find a tether for her to do this, but naturally, he flocks to the alcoholic beverage cart. Then we see Rita's ghost appear before Larry. She states that although she loves her Doom family, she doesn't want them saving her. She's made peace with passing on. Larry doesn't like this answer, obviously. Emotionally, he reveals that he was the only person who truly loved him. Emotionally, he reveals that she was the only person that truly loved him and stuck by him this whole time. Rita and Larry's friendship is very precious and one of the best things about the show. It aptly epitomizes the heart of the whole show. So, Ghost Rita hosts one more team meeting with the Doom Patrol. She repeats what she told Larry that she does not need the crew to revive her. Instead, Rita insists that she served her purpose She was meant to lead the others into the next chapters of their lives. Rita also points out that virtually all of their issues were self-inflicted. They were the source of their own problems. Perhaps it is time to move on. She believes it's time to disband the Doom Patrol. But first, she requests that they burn her body. Cliff vehemently protests. However, Vic is ready to honor her final wish, as are the others. Cliff, this whole time, was probably the ringleader of bringing Rita back from the afterlife. We have seen the whole series and everything. He is not the best with change, and this proves it and shows it once more. So that night, the gang holds a funeral for Rita. Cliff places a compact near Rita's corpse, claiming it represents her penchant for primping. Everyone else follows suit with bottles of liquor and accessories. Even Laura provides Rita's favorite drink, a dry martini. Larry sets Rita's body on fire. Kay begins singing a beautiful version of Ave Maria. In true Doom Patrol fashion, it gets weird. Her corpse transforms into a giant blob one last time before Laura goes in and deflates her. Rita reassures her friends that all is well before vanishing. What this article does not mention was all of the gagging on the smell of it all. And Larry's like, keep it together, guys. Keep it together. Rita's like, it's not that bad, guys. It's so funny. And that's just classic Doom Patrol. But that's it for Rita. Or is it?
She's gone.
After the funeral, our crew watches Rita's film Secret Rendezvous in the living room. Hey, remember in episode 3 when Rita woke up in her own movie from season 1? Good callback. By the flick's end, Larry suggests they watch it over again. When the morning rolls around, Kay notices Cliff is no longer on the couch. She finds Cliff packing his bags for Florida. He's planning to drive away without saying goodbye. Cliff asks Kay what she intends to do with the next chapter of her life. She claims she might sublet and spend her days painting. Cliff thinks that sounds pretty effing boring. Cliff hopes to spend as much time with his daughter and grandson as possible. This isn't a forever farewell, just a see you later. Our favorite best friends forever hug it out before Cliff speeds away. They flip each other the bird. Also, saying goodbye to their relationship. Later, Larry returns back to his bedroom. He asks Keegan what they should do. The thought of searching for Rama dances on the edges of his mind. Is it possible? Then we see that the furniture in the Doom Manor is covered in white sheets. Boxes are scattered about. Vic prepares to depart. Suddenly, Laura emerges from underneath a sheet on a sofa. Vic glimpses his future in the time stream, so is excited to return to Detroit. Laura, however, cannot shake the feeling that regardless of what transpires, she's always going to chicken out. Vic offers her some advice regarding the thin line between good and evil. Laura wonders aloud if she'll ever actually cross that line. What if she can't tell the difference? Vic vows to help her out in that department if she ever needs it. While packing his belongings upstairs, Larry grabs the red handkerchief from John Bowers. We see a collection of memories from Larry and John's romance. Larry wonders if he and Key could search for Rama if they had something of his. Meanwhile, Kay searches on her busted laptop for a sublet. Unfortunately, she comes up short. When she spots Larry, she asks him if he wants to watch a movie. However, he is heading out into the great unknown. He doesn't know what he'll find. Kay remarks that this move is uncharacteristic of him, but she fully supports it. Next, Kay hears the alarm bearing. She shouts that the Doom Patrol is officially disbanded. She discovers Casey in the basement. Casey knows that Dorothy told her that the manor would be empty. She also tells Kay of her plans to head into space in the unused spaceship sitting a few feet away from them. Kay repeats what she said to Cliff about her future plans. However, they sound unappealing now. She asks Casey if she would like a friend in space. Later, this is the scene that got me the whole time. Later in Florida, Cliff celebrates Rory's birthday with Clara and her wife Mel. Cliff holds Rory while walking outside, telling his grandson about his fixer-upper car. He wants Rory to have it eventually. Cliff freezes in place, so Clara steps in and grabs Rory. Sure, he has his longevity again, but he's still dying of Parkinson's. He returned to Florida to spend as much time with his family as possible for this exact reason. Meanwhile, a yellow bird lands on Rita's shoulder in the afterlife. She recognizes it, then she spots another familiar presence, Malcolm, her love. They reunite and embrace. Speaking of reunions, Larry and Keeg rescue Rama from the bottom of the sea. If you remember from last episode or 2 episodes ago, he said he was just going to turn himself into a cinder block and just go to the bottom of the sea, where he can't hurt anybody. So they go in to find him. They fly him into space, and Larry releases Rama from a chest. Suddenly, a glowing light envelops them as Larry's bandages unravel. Larry insists that it's all okay. They kiss as the light consumes them. They become a son. Presumably, as 1996, Larry foretold last episode. Then Vic stands next to Derek in a Detroit classroom as the latter introduces our cyborg as his teaching assistant. They'll teach the robotics class together. Vic sports his trademark red tracksuit. Elsewhere in space, Kay paints an artwork of her and Cliff standing outside Doom Manor while Casey cradles an adorable black kitten. Kay eventually does kiss Casey, and the latter grins as our lovebirds go in for round 2, floating in space in their little ship with their kitty. A rock version of the theme song plays as Laura returns to the ant farm. She's armed with a weapon. She fires on the organization and its employees, hoping to burn that place to the ground. It's haunted her for her entire life, and that's if we see of her. Finally, this is the part that gets me. We revisit Cliff, who's sitting in his car with baby Rory while Clara tinkers under the hood. He notices a strange reflection in the crystal Immortus gave him. He sees an adolescent Rory driving his car as Clara sits in the passenger seat. Then we flash to Rory attending prom in the same vehicle. He follows it up with taking his partner to the hospital. She's in labor. After that, we see an adult Rory driving Clara to the hospital for cancer treatments. Let's see. Next, Roy drives Cliff's car to attend Clara's funeral. Finally, we see Rory, now a grandfather, meeting his grandson for the first time in the same exact car. Cliff also flashes back to when he first held Clara as a baby. After the visions from the Immortus crystals, after the visions from the Immortus crystal ends, Clara asks Cliff if he's okay. He reassures her, "It's okay. I'm okay. I made it home." He says before his lights turn dim and he dies. He got to see his grandson's life thanks to Immortus' surprisingly sweet gift. Cliff is the first Doom Patrol member we meet, and it makes sense that this is how it ends. Mm-hmm. Oh, what an episode, man. Like that, the whole watching the car from the car angle, or technically from the crystal angle of Roy's life, all the way up to full circle him becoming a grandparent was absolutely beautiful. Yeah. What a show. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it was a fitting conclusion. I'm not thrilled that the show's off. I wish we had more of it. But I'm glad that it's wrapped because so the werebutts were becoming for me kind of like the screaming goats in Thor.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, the gags played out now.
Right. We've done several seasons with them now. So yeah. I mean, it's time to move on.
So I was kind of I'm glad we don't have to see them anymore. The Cliff storyline was a bit rough. Rita, of course, dying.
Yeah. And her being okay with it was very like her story has closed kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you kind of got the feeling that she knew that she was good. Even back to the, was it this episode or the last one where she had made a meal?
Oh, it was last episode.
Yeah, and she got on to Larry, and he was like, "But I don't eat."
Right.
And she said, "But you could still be here.
We're all going to sit together for a family for a meal."
I feel like she knew then.
Yeah. That they just weren't going to make it out of this. And it was very good, them all sitting around the living room watching her movie all night long. And it's just very family-like. I do hate that Kay and Cliff, I mean, they said goodbye in their own way. But I wonder if Kay knew he was going to die before she sees him again. So, but...
Yeah. Now the question, do you think we get... Because these aren't technically DCU characters.
Right.
But do you think we get any of them back? I mean, I could see Kaleidoscope.
Yeah, I can see Kaleidoscope somehow returning. Cyborg, obviously. For all intents and purposes, Larry, Rita, and Cliff are all done. So Laura, for sure, I could see coming back in some project in the future. Maybe like a multiverse kind of thing for the DCEU.
They could even utilize her in some way similar, not exactly, but similar to a Nick Fury type role, where she acts as someone who,
and she's still tackling her leadership and good and bad kind of stuff too. You could easily bring in Cyborg at that point too. If she's leading a team, she needs some help, and nice little cameo from him.
Yeah.
Will they actually? Probably not, but do I hope they do? hell yes. So
It'd be interesting if she ended up. We ended up seeing her go to work for Waller.
oh, that would be really good. Even if like it's like a one-off line, like she's in the office,
Yeah,
like space or something. Like not even. It's one of those things you know if you watch the show, but it's not like a big thing in like a movie or whatever. They don't make it, they don't harp on it. Like she
yeah,
says, "Oh, I
yeah,
need this," and you see Laura pop up like, "Oh, I'm on that," and then that's it, or something. I'd just be, I'm into stuff like that. But
yeah. Exactly.
but guys, that is it. The Doom Patrol
Is no more.
wrapped up and done. Oh, all right. We've got 6 episodes of Goosebumps to go through. So some of these I'm going to go through a little quick. We're going to thereviewgeek.com, and this is all by Fraser Fernandez, who has done all of them for this whole season. We begin episode 5 titled Reader Beware. With Nora locked up in the psychiatric ward, she does see Harold in front of her, demanding Slappy back. Mr. Bratt watches from the outside. The ward gets sent away by the nurse. I love all of these scenes with Slappy, well, not Slappy, but Biddle and Brat having these inner dialogues kind of thing. And with Biddle watching things from, 20 years past and having still an adolescent mind. Very good.
By the way, I didn't know until I saw his name in writing because I didn't pay attention, in credits or anything. I thought he was saying Brad.
No, it's Brent with two T's.
Yeah. So
that's why I watch closed captioning, because I'm old and sometimes the mixes on these shows and movies are just not what they need to be, and I just can't ever hear things. Which is always a big thing when we go to when we do our Superhero 7 and go to these movie premieres. I hate not having subtitles because I feel like I'm missing something, and that's why I like to rewatch these movies so I can rewatch and see what I did miss. Let's see. Colin arrives with Margot and Lucas. Margot shows them the guest room. The two express a sense of happiness to live under the same roof. At just 10, Margot spots her. Then Margot spots her mom returning home. Let's see. We see the family sitting together. Once Colin leaves, Margot asks Sarah about what's going on, but she refuses to reveal anything, claiming it's all too complicated. Let's see. Reaching the meeting, she is unable to produce anything constructive as her mom hasn't revealed anything yet to the group. The scene cuts to Mr. Bratt packing up and looking at a scrapbook. Sarah visits Nora in the psych ward and finds out what happened with Lucas. Later that day in the library, Mr. Bratt gives Margot a scrapbook to hand over to her mother to see for herself. Margot opens the book and sees a vision of her mother talking to Ben and then to Harold. She sees a dark room mentioning the next page. It heads over to the AV room, which it was in the past. We see in this page of the book that Sarah developing pictures in the dark room, and she realizes that her mother was friends with Harold. Later that day, the friends arrive at the meeting spot, and Margot claims her mother knew Biddle. Sarah approaches Victoria, questioning her about Nora's treatment, but Victoria justifies her actions. Victoria doesn't believe Nora's claims. It expresses how everything they have built can come crashing down. Listen, that lady should have been fired, tried, and everything else. She was drugging a patient. And knew she was drugging a patient. That is very unethical and very much a no-no and very much against the law. So that whole time, I would never be friends or be caught dead around this woman ever again in my life. And no, you were drugging me? Making everyone's thinking I was crazy. Well, I wasn't, is one thing. But drugging me is a completely different thing. Using your stature as a doctor. Anyways. So the group arrives at the theater. Margot explains to her friends that she needs to be in the location mentioned in the book to see the visions. Isaiah stops her, claiming it is too dangerous. Margot decides to proceed regardless and sees a vision of Harold begging Sarah to help him. He holds her hand. She feels weird about it and leaves. The friends realize her eyes have gone completely black, and the pages begin to flip on their own and stop on the page of Biddle's house. The scene switches to Colin. We don't care about this. Let's see, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. The kids decide to take Margot to the Biddle house and use the scrapbook there. Harold shows Margot a few kids sneaking into the house. She shows her how he was forced down into the basement and burned alive, leaving Margot to burn in the real fires. Just then her friends arrive and pull her out of the basement. They witness their parents stealing a briefcase from the house and running away, leaving Harold to die alone. The kids are shocked at the revelation. They realize Biddle is getting back at them for their parents' wrongs. However, Isaiah refuses to believe it, claiming there has to be something more to the story. They wonder what is inside inside the briefcase. Mr. Brad walks out and invites them over to show them what was in the briefcase at the end of Goosebumps. At the end of this episode was so good, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm kind of glad we weren't caught up, because it was this episode that I was like, I have to watch the next one, because we watched the next three, I think, back to back to back, because they left on such big cliffhangers.
So I had watched this episode.
This was the one you watched 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah. I was an episode ahead of you, and you had asked, it was something about Sarah's relationship and how that was
with Colin and everything.
Yeah. And I was like, no, it's not what you're thinking at the end of the previous episode. Yeah, I started at the time to say it's like Ross and Rachel, right? We weren't on a break.
Right.
But
they were very much like... Me and Jamie got into that too, because they were definitely like on a break and separated. Because she left for Seattle and moved her whole life there and just left everybody. I'm like, no. If you do that, we're separated. We are going through a divorce. Like that, yeah, you don't just pick up everything and say, oh, I'm moving to Seattle. Do you want to come with me? The answer is no. Okay, you're here, and we're not going to do anything else again.
Yeah, she has the excuse that she got out of town, and it was a trial separation, just to see if it's something that they should do. And he, from the way the show plays out, he almost immediately starts up something with Nora.
Yeah.
It was like he was just waiting for this chance. So,
but they were a decent couple together. We don't know how much it sped through and stuff like that. How fast it all was. Episode 6, titled "Night of the Living Dummy." Let's see.
Never heard of it.
That wasn't strange at all. We begin the episode with Mr. Bratt narrating the history leading up to all the current incidents. He starts by telling the story of 1925 and his great-grandfather Ephraim, a struggling stage performer. Ephraim was dissatisfied with his magic show's lack of success, visits a magic store in search of new tricks, but lacks the money. He's about to leave and he hears a whisper calling out to him and decides to purchase a mysterious suitcase. Returning home, his wife expresses disappointment upon seeing the doll inside. After she departs, Ephraim discovers a note with cryptic instructions. The next day, he incorporates the ventriloquist doll into his performance, but the audience boos him. Suddenly Slappy, the doll, comes to life and starts roasting him, much to the audience's amusement. This unexpected turn of events catapults his career. He becomes consumed by his success, neglecting his family and everyone around him. We flash to 1960 with Ephraim's audience starts to dwindle, prompting the manager to suggest adding a new opening act. While along with Slappy, the doll suggests the manager is conspiring against him. Slappy manipulates him into using a spell, turning the manager into a puppet. Slappy then instructs Ephraim to purchase a coffin and recite a spell. However, halfway through, Ephraim witnesses a terrifying vision and abandons the ritual. He hides Slappy back in the suitcase and moves to a new house for a life of isolation. In his old age, he seals the suitcase within a wall, ensuring it remains hidden. Could we not bury it in the middle of a forest somewhere and then put concrete over it? I mean,
could we not throw the doll in a wood chipper?
Oh, because that definitely would have worked too. I mean, they try catching it in a fire at some point. That doesn't count. Like, it doesn't work. Okay, let's try something different. You could break it apart. Anyways, we'll get there. But I agree. Like, there's a lot of other things we could have done here besides sealing him into a wall that you're going to pass down through your family's lifelines. Sure. Years later, Ephraim's granddaughter Georgia Biddle, along with her husband and son Harold, move into the house. Harold's father convinces him that the new school will be better, promising him the basement as his own personal space. The next day, he reassures Harold that he won't be facing bullies like in his previous school, gifting him a camera and suggesting he join the photo club. On his first day, Harold does join the club and befriends Nora and Sarah. He grows particularly close to Sarah, who shows interest in his camera. We sign to see a different side of the story we saw at the last episode. Days later, Hera and Sarah develop photos in the darkroom, leading to the meaningful conversation we saw from the last episode. She persuades him to accompany her to, she persuades him to accompany her to Ben's party. Harold prepares for the party, but the following morning he tells his dad he doesn't want to talk about it. Convinced, Sarah doesn't feel the same. In frustration, he throws something at the wall and stumbles upon the suitcase. Shocking. Introducing Slappy to his parents, Harold goes to school with him for a semester project against his parents' wishes. During the presentations, Eliza and Victoria are dismissed for inappropriate language. Harold begins his act but fails to captivate the audience. Suddenly, Slappy comes to life, humorously roasting the students and Harold. Despite his protest, the audience believes it's all part of the act, leaving him pleased by the applause. Let's see. Later, Harold shares a funny story with the girl, sensing that Sarah might be interested in him. That evening, Nora witnesses Slappy talking to Harold and rushes to tell Sarah. Terrified, Nora recounts what she saw, but Sarah, of course, dismisses it as misunderstanding. The next morning, Harold's parents confront him about the doll and forbid him from taking it to school. His father takes the suitcase, leading to a heated argument. While Harold is at school, his parents attempt to burn the doll, but only to find it resistant to the flames. When Harold returns, he's furious with his parents. Slappy persuades him to use the spell, which transforms his parents into puppets. Let's see.
You know what didn't make sense about this? Apparently, they waited till the end of the school day
Yeah.
to try to destroy the doll.
It's when they got home too. You know, they had to get home from work and.
Oh, that's not important enough to miss a day of work for.
Yeah, true. But ignoring the accusations, the kids in the story accuse Harold of being the murderer. But Mr. Bratt scolds them and yells at him to continue the tale. Very good. Justin Long, throughout this whole show, has been impeccable with his timing. Isaiah's great on here. James is great. Margot's the only one I didn't really... She looks like a 20-year-old to me. And I could not envision her as a high schooler. But that's neither here nor there. Let's see. Let's see. In the story's continuation, we see a talent show going on. Slappy reveals secrets about the other students, humiliating them in front of everybody. The teacher gets outraged, removing Harold from the stage. After the act, Sarah and the others confront Harold, but he pushes them away and leaves. They conclude that the doll is the source of the problem and devise a plan to steal it from Harold. We're seeing a different story here. The following night, they visit Harold's house and Ben seizes the doll. Slappy retaliates, causing chaos in the house. Ben quickly shuts the suitcase, and as Harold enters the basement, he closes the door. They try to get Harold to come out, but he panics and accidentally drops the candle, setting the basement ablaze. Seeing the smoke, the kids retreat and flee outside. They decide not to report the incident and leave. Slappy attempts to escape the suitcase, but Ben dismantles it with everybody else. They opt to bury it in Eliza's dad's mind, ensuring it remains hidden. Returning to the present, the kids draw the conclusion that their parents were trying to protect Harold from Slappy. Mr. Bratt is shocked to hear this and berates them, asserting that their parents are bullies. He insists that Slappy was Harold's best friend. When questioned about how he knows all this, he reveals that he is Harold and transforms into himself burning. Episode 7, Give Yourself Goosebumps. They said the thing. Let's see. Episode 7 begins with Mr. Bratt turning into Harold and disappearing. Horrified, the kids quickly rush to the door, but see a huge black void. Isaiah attempts to open the basement door, but it's locked. They hope for their parents to come looking for them, but are doubtful. Mr. Bratt has used their phones to text their parents that they'll be staying out for the night. Nora's time for dispatch arrives, but let's see, we're gonna get through all this. Let's see. On her way being discharged to the hospital, Mr. Bratt runs into Nora, who claims to be looking for her. Mr. Bratt claims to be looking for her and asks about a mutual friend. Mr. Bratt points to the mirror, revealing a reflection of Harold. Exiting the elevator, Nora manages to escape and heads to her garage. She looks for a sack and bumps into Colin, who didn't know she was discharged. She's surprised to know she was released and tries to talk to her, but she puts him off, claiming she has important work to do. She takes the sack away and drives off. The kids fidget with things in the house and suddenly hear a sound coming from the other room. They grab a weapon and prepare. Suddenly, Mr. Bratt takes a stance to beat him up, but he convinces them that he is indeed himself and he's been there a while. Let's see. The kids try to question him about how he reached the place, if there was a way out. Mr. Bratt claims he's tried his best, but he can't find anything, tells them to make peace with the fact. The kids pump up his spirits and they begin to find a way out. Just then, Isabel sees a light at the bottom of the door and sees a white light in the abyss. After some argument, they send Isabel to the white light by tying curtains together and lowering her down. Entering it, she finds herself in the school corridor. She heads towards the theater and sees the people turn all into puppets. She quickly rushes back up as the place begins to collapse and the others pull her to safety. As they're pulling her, Mr. Bratt bangs into the pillar and finds himself back in his own body in the real world for a few minutes before seeing his reflection being sent back into the house. Let's see. Mr. Brett tells the kids that the pain gets him back into his original body and asks them to punch him. They decide to get Mr. Brett in his body and have him write them way out of the scrapbook. Nora parks her car to enter a general store. Mr. Brett follows. Just then, Isabel punches him into his real body. He attempts to call out to Nora and tell her that he's not Harold, but his hands won't cooperate with him, preventing him from opening the door. Biddle punches him back into the house. Mr. Brett tells Lucas that Nora has stopped at the general store, and he realizes she is headed to the cabin in the mountains. Lucas punches him back into reality. Mr. Brad attempts to open the scrapbook, but Harold resists it. He ends up throwing the scrapbook into a puddle of water. Back in the house, the kids watch as the house disintegrate.
So, real quick, the youngest member of the kids is Margot in real life.
Really?
She's 24.
She looked every day at it.
Isaiah and Isabel are 25 in real life.
Good Lord.
James is 28 in real life.
We gotta stop casting adults as children. Saying it right here. Episode 8, titled You Can't Scare Me, which honestly should have been the finale, but we'll get on that later. The episode begins with the kids still trapped in the scrapbook and now shifting pages as the scrapbook has fallen into a puddle. Mr. Bratt attempts to head over to the scrapbook, but Harold takes control of one of his arms and holds onto the car handle. Mr. Bratt somehow manages to break free and draws the kids an exit out of the scrapbook, returning them back to the consciousness. Unfortunately, though, Harold takes full control of Mr. Bratt. Let's see, Nora arrives at the cabin, begins to prepare to bury Slappy. Just as she is, a police officer arrives. A dumb conversation ensues here. Following that, Mr. Bratt arrives at the barricade. The same police officer tells him to head back to get chains pursued due to the upcoming storm. Mr. Bratt goes off and back further down the road and begins to make his way on foot. Back in the cabin, Slappy tries to convince Nora to spare him, but Nora tapes up his mouth and proceeds. Their kids, in the meantime, make their way to the cabin. Isaiah and Margot have a conversation about the relationship, but are interrupted by Isabel. Lucas urged, which was very spot on for teenagers. They were like, it was Isaiah, Isabel, Margot, and they were texting each other back and forth. And Isabel goes, "Are you texting each other?" And it was very, very teenagery, because I would have been the same exact way. Y'all are annoying me. Stop. You're right here. Mr. Brett arrives at the cabin and sees Nora taking Slappy. He chases her, but she quickly gets into her car, but the car does not start in time. Classic horror movie fashion, which we're in 2023 now. What are the odds? He chases her, but Mr. Brad begins to pound on the windshield, successfully cracking it. The car suddenly starts, and she manages to shake him off, injuring his leg. However, the car stops again, and Nora begins to run on foot while Mr. Brad limps and follows her. Lucas and the others reach the cabin to find that Nora has already left. They head into the woods in search of her. She enters the woods and hides behind a tree while Mr. Brett is searching. She attempts to run, but Mr. Brett suddenly grabs her foot and tries to snatch Slappy away. Nora breaks free and, of course, continues to run. Just then, the parents of all the other kids arrive to see James and Isabel standing. James lets them know that they know everything about Slappy and about Harold, and the group heads into the woods to find Nora. I'm glad this happened because, okay, we know what happened. We know, let's go. We got things to do. We didn't harp on it.
Right.
But this whole show, very well written. And there's not a whole lot of notes I could have for writing this besides this need to be the finale. But I understand. Jamie's like, no. Anyways, we'll get there. While the friends look for Nora, Isaiah falls off the cliff without being noticed. Lucas and Margot realize he isn't with them. Who? Oh, Isaiah falls off the cliff. Okay. Lucas and Margot realize that he's not with them, but hears his screams from a distance. While looking for Isaiah, they come across Nora and bring her back to consciousness. Stuck clinging on a root from a dead drop, Isaiah decides to try and climb back up despite his broken arm. Reaching the top, he sees Slappy and Mr. Bratt. Mr. Bratt picks up a stone to strike Isaiah's hand and throw him off the cliff, but just then Lucas arrives and pulls Mr. Bratt away. Nora tries to convince him that Slappy is evil, that he shouldn't listen to him, but he isn't convinced. Just then, Margot calls him Hair Bear, a nickname used by his parents that she saw in the scrapbook. The other parents, along with James and Isabel, also arrive at the scene. They plead with and appreciate him for being their friend, making him rethink his whole decision. Harold realizes Slappy is evil, helps Isaiah up, and hurls Slappy off the cliff. Harold then exits Mr. Brett's body and reunites with Sarah, turning him from a burnt monster back into his human shape. He then approaches a vision of his parents before hugging them and disappearing at the end of Goosebumps episode 8.
Yeah.
But at the end of the episode, someone gets back to Slappy, and he says, "About time he came back."
Yeah,
Um,
I agree with you. I think this
this
would have been
should
the
have been the
finale,
finale.
and then you could take the next two episodes and put them on the front end of a potential season two.
Correct. I didn't
Um,
understand that.
and I know adrenaline's a thing. Isaiah's not using that arm to pull his body weight up.
Absolutely not. And that kid is not sitting there for that long in a frozen cliffscape here
Right.
and switching arms. Like the pain would be unbearable, and he would have already let me go. There's
Yeah.
no way. I know suspend disbelief, the whole thing, but yeah, this should have been the last episode. And so we stopped with this episode last week, I think. Before I knew that wasn't gonna be able to go on, I was like, okay, let's just stop. And I think I took a nap or something. And I was okay with it because like there was no big cliffhanger that needed to be solved. We had the cliffhanger of you finally came back or something like that, which leaves you guessing, okay, who came back to Slappy, and everything's kind of done with. And then they keep going, and we had 2 episodes left. I was like, what the hell are we doing? And then we get to this episode, episode 9, Night of the Living Dummy Part 2, and I was like, this should have been the premiere of a season 2.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was originally written for that way, but they try to play it off, which we'll talk about with Mr. Bratt, like the actual Mr. Bratt writing a story, and didn't have a good ending. So he says, okay, I'm going to get Slappy back, and we're going to figure out a new ending to this. But that makes it perfect for a premiere for a new season. You're like, oh, okay, the story is wrote up, but let's keep this going. And it made sense. Like you could even drop these 2 episodes back to back, 9 and 10, or episodes 1 and 2 of the season, and it would have made perfect sense because the second the last episode ends on a big cliffhanger that you could have kept going with. We'll get to it. It just didn't make any sense to me.
I feel like had it ended after episode 8, my rating for the season was probably pretty high, like a 4.5.
Yep.
After episode 10, I'm like, yeah, it's a 4.
Yeah.
Maybe,
I'm even like 3.5-ish, 4. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Like it just didn't. Like it was great, and I was like, we just drug this out for no needed reason. And I don't know if they got word that they're not going to do a season 2, or if it was like right during the writer strike started, and so they're like, okay, let's get this done just in case kind of thing. We want to tell our story and leave it open for season 2, but whatever. So episode 9, Night of the Living Dead, the penultimate episode, which I didn't think was the best. Episode 9 commences with Mr. Bratt delivering a creativity-inspiring speech to a biology class. Later that day, he receives a call from his principal informing him of his termination. Julia arrives to collect the rent, but Mr. Bratt pleads for a few extra days. Suddenly, Mr. Bratt's dog, Fifi, runs off into traffic and gets hit and killed. 3 days later, a lawyer approaches him and informs him about the property he has inherited. The scene then revisits all the haunting events that bring us up to the current time, with Mr. Bratt documenting the entire sequence of events. Margot is obliged to leave town and relocate to Seattle with her mother. Mr. Bratt finishes writing the account and sends it off. He vents about his experience to Ben, who's hanging a stuffed dog up a Fifi. Ben also hints at having been writing a book, which Ben regards suspiciously. Lucas questions Nora about moving to Seattle, but she encourages him to do so. He joins the others on a road trip to Seattle. Mr. Bratt meets them, but receives a call from New York City, which was very weird. I understand the teacher, because they all went to this traumatic event together, and Mr. Bratt obviously not, right in the right mind space because of all of this. I was like, there's some Biddle stuff kind of accompanying this, like mentality. Yeah. It was kind of weird. Mr. Bratt struggles to conceive an ending, but finally manages to draft one. Unfortunately, Anne calls him and asks him to refrain from turning all the characters into ghosts in a twist ending. Mr. Bratt backspaces the whole page and begins anew. I'm going to... Here's the scene that I was talking about earlier. The kids' parents gather for dinner together and celebrate surviving everything from their childhood into this recent events. If I was Nora, you would not catch me dead with any of these people. No. Sorry.
Well,
especially
maybe Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah's fine. But what's her name? Julia, I think is what it was, who drugs her? No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. You're not going to see me eating lunch and laughing with you.
Unless I'm hanging out with you again so I can get close and kill you.
You're right. Exactly. We'll turn this a whole different story,
Right.
Kind of skipping. A lot of this episode was not needed. While driving through Mount Seymour, Mr. Brett remembers Slappy and ends up finding him. He brings Slappy home and recites the spells that revives him. Let's see. Slappy pressures Mr. Brat to open the coffin that we saw a couple episodes ago and read the spell. Midway, Mr. Brat stops after witnessing the same scary burning vision. Slappy insists he continues. Suddenly, Slappy's soul enters the decaying body inside the coffin, causing him to start moving. At the end of the episode, Ben enters the room, and Slappy, now back in his original body, uses a spell to turn him into a puppet.
Undo.
Yeah. Khan, just such a cool like villainy name too. I really like that name. All right, episode 10, which I don't have a Welcome to Horrorland, which is also all these book titles. Episode 10 begins with Kondu in the middle of a battlefield. His name wasn't Kondu. It was like starts with an R, but like it was never revisited again. Because like James said, that's not his name. His name's Kondu. I said, no. The guy's original name is, I forget what it was. Started with like Randolph or Roof or something like that.
The spirit or the god or whatever is Kondu.
Well, no, it was,
right?
We don't know who it was, but because Kondu was one of the names on there, he just adopted it. Because he says, because I had this whole debate, I had to reverse it and show Jamie and everything. Like, as he says, I took the name Kondu off of one of the spells words and made it my mission to cleanse the world of all the horror stuff like that. And I was like, sure, awfully generic, cool. He gets shot in the stomach and starts bleeding, but an explosive goes off, throwing him into a strange underground temple. Wouldn't, like, we're digging trenches around this. Wouldn't we already know this is here?
Right.
Whatever.
Doesn't really.
He reads the inscription on the wall, and instantly his body begins to heal. Fast forward to 1885, he enters a carnival and visits the tent of a puppet maker. The puppet maker, Mahar, recognizes him as Kondu, the famous magician. Kondu brings a doll to life, proving to Mahar that he does not perform tricks and he actually has magical powers. Kondu deems the carnival a failure and offers to help change it in exchange for something built for him. Mahar accepts and gets to work. A year later, we see Mahar entering Kondu's tent and discovers everyone has been turned into puppets. Following this, Mahar works on the puppet Kondu had brought it back to life and gives it to Kondu as a gift the night before the ritual. Kondu admires the puppet, but Mahar starts reciting the spell to turn Kondu into a puppet. Genius, because all he did was turn the words around in different order.
Yep.
That's all it was. Despite Kondu's attempt to stab Mahar, he can't evade his fate, and his soul enters Slappy. The scene cuts to present day. The kids wake up. Margot's alarmed word that Lucas hasn't called back and tries to contact him, with Lucas ignoring the calls. Upon reaching home, Lucas is shocked to see his father, revealing he was in a witness protection program, which I instantly knew what was going on. This is me talking. Instantly knew.
Yeah.
Nora urges Lucas to accept the truth and embrace his father. Lucas hugs his father, only to be turned into a puppet by Kondu. The kids get back home to Port Lawrence and head to their houses. James urges Isaiah to talk to Margot, and he approaches her, touching her hands, and he hesitates to confess his feelings, but she encourages him to open up. Returning home, we see a scout from college offering Isaiah a full ride to the University of Washington. Isaiah attempts to sign the documents, but realizes that his arm is healed and doesn't have cast on it, and backs off. James sees Sam with a poster asking him out to prom. Margot is surprised to see her parents back together. Isaiah stops her from hugging them and reveals it's all a lie. The kids all drive to Lucas's house to see him ride off on a bike. They chase him until he stops, revealing that he's also been turned into a puppet. The parents pull the kids out of the car and take them to a tent with Mr. Brat. Mr. Brat admits to everything that happened last episode. We see Kondu arrive, revealing his creation history. He explains his philosophy and intention behind the human sacrifice tower, intending to burn it down and kill everybody with 1,000 people inside. They plan to stop Kondu by resurrecting Mahar. Unfortunately, Mahar helps Kondu light the tower on fire. However, it's the same trick Kondu has used, and he turns himself into a puppet. But Kondu doesn't remain a puppet for long, revealing the spell doesn't work on him. Isaiah threatens to burn Kondu's book, but Kondu reveals he has memorized the entire journal. He casts a spell causing fiery veins to wrap around the kids. Isaiah uses the journal to cut through the vines. Very weird, by the way. Didn't like this part. And the CGI was also horrendous. Like the whole green screen thing was just not good. Which is very weird because we've had phenomenal CGI all season long, which makes me think it was kind of rushed. He tackles Kondu to stop it from lighting the tower on fire. Margot finds the spell and reverses it to undo his resurrection. A few soldiers emerge from the ground, pulling Kondu with them. In the struggle, Kondu tries to shoot Margot, but Isaiah takes the bullet instead. In the hospital, doctors are unsure about Isaiah. Margot enters the ICU, expressing her feelings for him and her desire to stay with him. She casts the same spell Kondo used to prevent himself from dying on Isaiah. Isaiah recovers and sits up. Mr. Brett's in the bathroom. He sees a reflection of Kondo in the mirror at the end of the episode. Should have been episode 2 of season 2.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
What do we know?
I agree. Now I just looked it up. There's 240 Goosebumps books.
Good Lord. I didn't realize it was that much. Wow.
So
okay.
If they use a different book for every episode, they could do 24 seasons, 10 episodes a season.
I doubt they will, but I'd be okay with it. Just do New Kids.
Well, and that's the other question. If they come back for season 2,
Margot's going to look 35, and that still won't be convincing.
Do you do a time jump? Just to allow these actors to play closer to their own age.
Yeah. I feel they have to.
I thought so. When I was looking up the ages, I thought Biddle had looked familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Did you recognize him?
Harold Biddle?
Yeah. He played young Morgan Edge in Superman and Lois.
Oh. Well, see, so Kondo looked familiar to me, and it bugged me, and I looked it up, and he was Philip in The Last of Us. So, like, a whole season he was in. And I was like, oh, and that's all I could see after that. But great actor. Like, I felt like he did great the whole time, too.
Yeah.
Man, those last 2 episodes were just rough, though. But
yeah.
again, I'm right there with you. I'm at 3.5, 4 for the whole season. Again, right there with you. If it ended with episode 8, we're good.
Yeah. Episode 8, I think it's a stellar season.
Yeah.
The last 2 episodes just kind of... I would have even been okay if they had released... If we were going to do a time jump in an actual season 2, and they just made these 2 episodes 9 and 10 like season 1.5.
Right.
Just to drop and fill the gap and say, when this comes back,
right.
This is going to help explain how we get there.
Oh, God.
Nothing.
It just makes no sense. Maybe even do like their senior year, they're about to graduate, and this whole comes back. So, like, have the Mr. Bratt do his book, and then, hey, I can't think of a sequel to this book series. Then I'm going to go back and get Slappy. And it would make sense of why Margot's trying to move to Seattle. You have her moving away to college. I mean,
if he does the book, he could also do a book tour, which if Kondu is inside him.
Which how? Basically. Didn't he go to hell?
That's what it looked like.
Yeah, so I don't understand how he's back.
He was screaming. So maybe he was screaming an incantation.
Life force. It was very funny, though, because Justin Long goes, oh, not again, and then the episode ends. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's it. That's our last little Halloween horror stuff, though. Finally. 3 weeks later. But you can't help it, okay? It's a long show. We had a lot of stuff going on. I'm going to reviewgeek.com for this one. This is Season 2, Episode 2 of Invincible, titled, In About 6 Hours, I Lose My Virginity to a Fish. This is by Noah Petrillo.
Been there.
Yeah, it's happened to all of us, At the beginning of Episode 2, it's graduation day at RVJ High School, but Mark is missing from his seat next to Amber, Eve, and William, which doesn't make sense because none of their names or last names sync up, but whatever. We see Mark fighting a rematch against Doc Seismic at the Washington Monument. This time he's a giant magma friends that help him fight and destroy it. Mark is able to sneak out a win despite a ton of damage to the famous obelisk. He gets back to the ceremony just in time as we see everybody graduating. The 4 amigos at the end share summer plans at Eve's treehouse. Mark is rather separate, anxiously poised for duty. The NASA-esque Space Force discusses the Season 1's mission to Mars, where the Sequids are threatening to take over. Astronaut Rust, though, is one of these body snatching shape-shifting creatures. Eve helps cut through the red tape of the city construction, helping Chicago rebuild from the Invincible versus Omni-Man fight, which was awesome. Like, her powers, probably the most useful.
Big mistake, though.
Yeah, but not her fault. I mean, the city should have already taken care of this problem.
Right.
But, what do we know? Debbie fails to relieve Mark's anxiety over becoming like his father. Immortal and Duplicate hook up to Rex's dismay. Gross. Okay? Yeah. This is pedophilia in every sense of the word. I know what she tries to in like the next episode say, I've lived for essentially, if you count each of my lives, we're just the same age. I'm like, that logic does not pan out.
No, no,
That does not work.
it really doesn't. No.
Sequid Russ struggles with human behavior. We see Mark arriving at the cursed Midnight City in search of a revived Darkwing. It turns out that its assistant, which of course this word sidekick is degrading, has taken up Darkwing's mantle. He tries to leave Mark in a dark room called the Shadowverse, but Mark traps the new Darkwing with him, which reminded me a lot of his dad.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was very, I was like, oh, I like this, and I loved Midnight City because it's essentially Gotham.
Yeah,
But it's stuck in midnight because of a sorcerer. Just they can't find a way to reverse it. So it's just Midnight City. It's just constantly stuck in midnight. Very, very, very good. God, I really want to read these comics. Like I really want to get all the omnibuses, but I also don't want to take the magic of the show away, which is it's a big what do I do kind of thing. Let's see. Mark threatens that no one knows what he's capable of, that he could be like his father. We see Debbie criticizing Cecil over his arrangement with Mark. She's surprised to see Donald, who, if you remember, died at Omni-Man's hand in the finale of season 1. Eve learns that her father works at a minimum wage job at Burger Mart. She turns an apple to a 24-karat gold apple, but her father refuses to take it. This whole family is just ridiculous. I don't know why Eve continues to try here.
I understand him having pride, not wanting his child to be the one that allows them to pay the bills and all that. But at a certain point,
you gotta let your pride go.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wouldn't want to work at Burger Mart for the rest of my life.
No.
In the wake of Omni-Man murdering Aquarius, Atlantean Custom demands that Mark marries Aquarius' widow to atone for the crime. Okay, sure. That pans out. Meanwhile, the Guardians are getting back into action to fight the Lizard League. Sequid Russ emerges as a shape-shifting superhero genius. I loved Russ. It so happens that Aquaria was the true ruler of Atlantis, and she's done away with the old marriage customs. Instead, Mark faces trial by combat for his father's sins. The Depth Dweller, who is Marcus's opponent, is humongous. Debbie has a tough day selling houses with a couple with an angry, controlling husband, which is some of this stuff I'm going to cut out because it's not.
I did like the introduction of the Depth Dweller, though.
Yes.
Because at first it's just that little antenna.
Seahorse looking thing. As soon as I saw it, I was like, we're doing the little anglerfish thing. And sure enough, very good. Like this whole fight scene was very well done.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mark requires backup to escape the Death Dweller. After he's home free, the beast begins slaughtering the Atlantean people. He decides at this moment he's not his father and rushes back to help with renewed strength. He's still pulled into the depths and manages an unseen narrow escape to the surface. Cecil counts him lucky. Donald doesn't realize that he's a clone. Let's see. Eve's dad shares the other side's perspective of Eve's work in Chicago. Because of her actions, the condemned area she rebuilt collapsed into unstable ground that the city had cordoned off a long time ago. Should have already done something about this. Hindsight 2020 here. Luckily, nobody died. But like it was... Still. Debbie, confronted with the metaphor of the broken cabinet door, rips it from the wall. Not even Mark can console her. Shapeshift reveals his fake origin story over images of Sequid's escaping Mars. The Supreme Lizard is killed by a loyalist to King Lizard. In the epilogue, Angstrom leaves a captured evil Mark to be dealt with by the female versions of Cecil and Donald. We finally got the Lizard League, though. All of season 1, they talked about the Lizard League. But we finally got to see them, and it was, whatever. Okay. This last one, episode 3, This Missive, This Machination by Noah Petrello on Review Geek. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Halfway through the episode, it went to black. I was like, oh, God, that was a quick episode. And then it went 30 more minutes. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a long epilogue.
Yeah, it was weird because it lasted almost the running time of a normal episode.
Yeah.
Seemed like. And then they started the credits, and I was like, all right, that was a strange episode. Yeah. They didn't really...
It was all about Alan, which I'm okay with.
Right.
Then they went to the real episode. I was like, okay. Which you have to remember, though, we only get 4 episodes this year, and we don't know when the next 4 are coming out.
That's true.
So we got one more. This is the penultimate, if you will. All right. Invincible goes to college in episode 3 of the series. Mark, embarrassed by his toys, throws them all away in the dumpster, except for his favorite, Seance Dog. Good name for a superhero. William, now Mark's roommate, explains the familiar sock over the door implications, which you all know, ladies and gentlemen, because it's been around forever, and immediately puts it to use. Mark and Amber have relations for the first time as well due to that. A narrator then turns our attention to this machination. The narrator recounts planet Europa being taken over by the Viltrumites. They join the coalition of planets. The Utopians create Alan, who, of course, played by Seth Rogen, to challenge the Viltrumites and ultimately search for anyone that can defeat them. Rather than introduce the show as Invincible, the title credits then read Alan the Alien. Very well done. Mm-hmm. Very cool. Let's see. The coalition is not doing well against the Viltrumites. Alan argues at the council on Mark's behalf because they don't trust them. Thetis suspects the Viltrumites have infiltrated the council. Did you know who that was? Could you tell by the voice right off the rip?
No.
Pete Ross. Not Pete Ross. God, I think it was Optimus Prime.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as he said a couple lines, the same thing with Sterling Brown. I was like, I know that voice. And I kept thinking, I was like, I think that's Optimus Prime.
Because what's funny, though? Now that you mention it, I think we talked about that in season 1.
Well, we did, and we talked about during the when we did our reaction to the trailer and it had all the names up there. We noticed his, and so we're looking for it. But that was months ago. So let's see. But Thaddeus suspects the Viltrumites have infiltrated the castle. Everyone is getting busy, so the narrator turns attention to Alan's cat-like alien pet. One of my favorite gags of the whole season.
Which then starts licking itself.
Yeah. I see. At dinner, Alan's confronted by 3 Viltrumites that are looking to confirm that Omni-Man had a child on Earth and abandoned his post. Alan will not answer those questions, so they beat him to within an inch of his life while his girlfriend watches. Thaddeus pulls the plug on Alan, killing him. So, the scene where Alan is beat up, his eyes out, and it's coming from his side here, is a 1-to-1 from the comics. And I saw someone on Twitter, which it was kind of spoiled for me, but it didn't really spoil anything because it was just the page of him. I was like, oh, y'all faithfully did 1-to-1 from the comic. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, his arm was ripped off.
Yeah, it was ripped in half, and his eyeball was out and floating, and I love Alan Alien. So, this is when it goes to the black screen, and we come back. Robot, now Rudy, is hard at work removing fear from his brain, literally. This doesn't sit well with the monster girl. He summons the courage to ask her to a movie, and she agrees. Debbie goes to a support group for spouses of superheroes. She meets Theo, who is played by Daveed Diggs. Monster girl helps Rudy sneak into his first ever in-theater movie and try his first burger. I thought that was great. Debbie and Theo, but I have a suspicion, though, before we move on for them, that he's going to try to remove fear from his brain, and he's become a villain. Because I feel like that's a trope that we see. So Debbie and Theo bond over their experiences over drinks after SOS, which is spouses spouses of superheroes. Genius. God, so good. But Debbie learns that Omni-Man killed Theo's partner, the Green Ghost. As it turns out, William was not having relations earlier. He just forgot to take the sock off the door after the demonstration. Seance Dog then knocks on the door, the real one, not the toy, asking for Mark. He's actually Noir's asking Invincible to help his people from death by meteor showers. Invincible agrees to help despite Cecil protesting this. Debbie decides to open up to Theo outside of the bar. Theo is angry after hearing the truth and tells Debbie not to come back to this group. The shape-shifting bug Niazlot leads Mark to his king. When did you start realizing something was wrong? Was it here? Because when they flew in and it's not being destroyed by asteroids and by billions of people, I was like, that's kind of weird. And then Mark catches on too. But who is the king, Chris? It is none other than Nolan, a.k.a. Omni-Man, Mark's father. And the episode ends. J.K. Simmons going, hello, son. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Oh, chef's kiss. God, what ending.
It was also kind of strange because looking back on it, one thing that should have tipped it was he comes to Earth looking for Mark Grayson, not looking for Invincible.
Mm-hmm.
So
how would he know who his real name was?
Right.
and where he was.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Seance Dog didn't know that.
that's what it is.
So, Chris, it is time. So this week, those are two main things I want to talk about. Or three things. The Marvel's one of them. Doom Patrol finale.
Right.
And the Loki finale. We're going to Deadline.com. Oh, listen. If you haven't, you're going to have... People have to watch this. Like, oh, this is like MCU in its perfection. We're going to Deadline.com for the recap titled Glorious Purpose. Now, Chris, I know what you're thinking. Yes, that was the title of episode 1 of season 1. Oh, beautiful. It's an Ouroboros. Beginning and the end. So, oh, God. Anyways, this is by Katie Campione. Episode 5 left many questions still to be answered, which ended with Tom Hiddleston's titular character, who has just learned how to control his time slipping, returned to the moment right before Victor Timely is ripped to shreds while trying to amplify the temporal loom. As episode 6 opens, Loki stands back and watches it happening again before asking OB what they've done wrong, or what they did wrong. OB says they weren't fast enough, so Loki thinks he just needs to get everyone to hustle. So he time slips back to the moment over and over and over again, rushing through the instructions before putting the multiplier into the room, trying to get Victor to have some pep in his step. But no matter how fast they go, Victor gets turned to spaghetti every single time. Finally, Loki realizes they don't need to move faster that moment. He needs to go back to an earlier moment. Loki then slips back to the moment that Victor and Obi first meet. He speaks through their introduction and tries to get Obi working on the multiplier using Victor's prototype, but Obi is a bit cautious. I love this because they did not show us it. Because you could, like, each time we went to a new thing, we realized, oh, okay, Loki's been at this for a long time. And, like, they didn't do that whole thing of dragging that out for us. They showed us the appropriate amount of humor and just got to the point.
Yeah, at one point he asked, how long would it take for me to learn everything that OB knows? Oh. And they're like, it could take thousands of years.
Yeah, we get there. And it's, like, beautiful. Like, most shows would show this. And they don't, because we're not dumb and we're not idiots. And so we don't have to see that. No, okay.
Speak for yourself.
That was okay, true.
Yeah. Hey, wait a minute.
Let's see. Speech to instruction. Okay. See, as much as Loki would like to help in this moment, he's not the expert in theoretical physics. Or is he, Chris? Loki asks Obi how long it would take for him to learn everything Obi can teach him about the subject. He says decades. And Victor chimes in and says it would actually take centuries. Good thing Loki can now come back to this exact moment at any time he wants and relearns. So what do? Loki spends a few centuries learning the ins and outs of theoretical physics, because it just goes, it takes centuries actually. And it goes black screens and says centuries later. Genius. Puts us right back where we were, and Loki's like, blah, 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 saying all this science. Perfect. Finally, he returns to that moment with a plan as well as the knowledge to execute it. And what do you know? For the first time, Victor is able to make it down to the gangway and launch the multiplier into the temporal room. Just for a moment, the team revels in their success. But before long, the readings are off again and the loom is overloading. Victor realizes that the branches are expanding at an infinite rate, and because there's no way to scale for infinite, there's actually no way to solve this problem. The loom will always fail. And that's when Sylvie realizes that this was doomed to happen as soon as the timeline started branching. Ding, that's the light going off in Loki's head, realizing that he needs to return all the way to his and Sylvie's encounter with He Who Remains at the end of time, just as Sylvie is about to kill him. Loki tries everything he can to convince Sylvie she can't kill him, but she doesn't listen. She kills He Who Remains, or Loki kills her. Loki refuses to kill Sylvie, even after countless rewinds and attempts to convince her. After who knows how many tries of doing this, He Who Remains pauses times. How many times have you been at this? He asked Loki. Perfect. Like, this was one of those things, like, I was drawing the floor. I was like, oh my God. The writing of this show is so good. And this show, and because you can't just do season 1 and season 2. It's Loki. It's Loki the show. And it's in my top 5 MCU. Like, I am still clamoring after this, and we watched this 2 weeks ago, Chris, and I still cannot stop thinking about it. And seeing a bunch of the interviews and things like that, because now they can, because of the strike. It's over. It turns out his "see you soon" in the Loki season 1 finale was a bit more literal than one might have anticipated. He reveals that he never would have sat by and let Sylvie kill him, except he knew it would always come back to this exact moment anyways. He unpauses Sylvie only for Loki to pause her again. A new trick up his sleeve, presumably as he has learned to control time after doing this time and time over. He says, "And what makes you think this is the first time we've had this conversation?" I was like, oh, no, he didn't. And it was so good. Loki, looks like Loki knows what needs to be done, and He Who Remains has even confirmed it, but he's so far unwilling to face it. He Who Remains tells Loki that the loom is a failsafe, and when it is overloaded, it deletes the branches that aren't supposed to be there, which is everything but the sacred timeline. So when this explodes, the sacred timeline still exists, but the TVA is collateral damage. Easy enough to fix, he says, but no matter what, Loki is destined to lose. That is not an answer the god of mischief is willing to accept, though. He decides he's going to destroy the loom, even though He Who Remains warns that will start a war that no one survives. Not even the sacred timeline, but Loki is determined, which is the part 2 of the multiversal war. Is what we're setting up here.
Yeah, and one thing I like about that the line that he's destined to lose. He's been told that since we first met him.
It's Thor.
And it's always bothered him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's determined he's not going to lose.
Dude, there's like so many. We'll get to them, but there's so many callbacks to Loki's whole journey through all of the MCU. It's beautiful. Okay. Let's see. He time slips again, this time going to the very, very beginning. We're back at season 1, episode 1, where Loki's being interrogated by Agent Mobius. I don't think it's got the quote in here, but some of this is like the most beautiful, like just acting and coworkers talking to each other. It was so well done, the conversations that Mobius and them have together. Let's see. Loki cuts him off, anticipating the question he's going to ask, and redirects the conversation. He asks how Mobius finds comfort despite having to choose who lives and who dies. But Mobius insists there is no comfort to be found at the TVA. Mobius tells him of a story when he was tasked with pruning someone who would be responsible for 5,000 deaths that were not part of the sacred timeline. When he arrived at the point where he needed to prune the culprit, he realized the target was an 8-year-old boy. He hesitated, and another hunter stepped in. The hunter, Ravonna Renslayer. Ultimately, Mobius tells Loki he needs to choose his own burden. Suddenly, that timeline is being shred apart, and Loki is back in A.G. Doug's, aka OB, workshop right as the timeline is turning to spaghetti. He pauses time to have a moment with Sylvie, and as he starts to explain all that he's been through, she guesses where this is all leading. She knows Loki will need to kill her if he plans to keep He Who Remains alive, but she also warns him that doing so will strip free will away from everyone who would ever set off a Nexus event on the sacred timeline. But Loki wonders what is the point of free will if everyone dies? Right. Oh, there's so much, man. This is the conversation with Mobius, him going back to Sylvie, and them having this conversation, and her immediately realizing what needs to be done.
I know that we'll probably never find out. But I'm curious who the individual was, who the 8-year-old was that.
Yeah, so people have been going back and like Googling because he said the Black Sea and stuff like that, and there's nothing in history about it.
Yeah.
So I think everyone went through and looked. Now, does that mean there's something in MCU? Maybe.
Right.
But as far as like real life stuff, there's not. So, Sylvie reminds Loki that sometimes he might have to die fighting, and it's okay to destroy something as long as there's something to replace it with. Now Loki has formulated a new plan. He once again time slips back to the moment right before the temporal loom explodes. Before anyone can stop him, he opens the bay doors and runs out to the gangway toward the loom. As he walks, he transforms. His clothes become a billowing cape, and he's adorned with his horned helmet and uses his powers to destroy the loom. The helmet, Chris, is black and got those gold specks and stuff. It's the same material from He Who Remains at the End of Time's temple. Mm-hmm. Like, oh my God, the music was so damn good. As he stands among all the dying branches, he begins to grab hold of them and walk towards a rip in space, bringing all the branches into the end of time. As he gathers the branches, he walks towards the throne at the Citadel, once occupied by He Who Remains, and takes his seat. The branches glow back to life, and it appears he is now Loki, God of Stories. Oh, and Keeper of Time is what they put. But God, it was
And
the last scene of him sitting there with just tears in his eyes. No, so the whole season, and even I think it was the last episode, if not 2 episodes ago, he tells Sylvie, "I just don't want to be alone. That's why I'm trying to save my friends." And he sacrifices everything, and now he's truly alone. But he's watching everyone gonna have lives now. All the branches are he's powering all the branches. He's the source and everything. Speaking of, do not let me forget next week when we're talking about news and stuff about the theory that you sent me.
Okay.
The article, because I want to delve back into that more on air. A black title card appears, letting viewers know this is after, though there's no timeline for when exactly, but time works differently in the TVA, so who really knows? TVA is up and running as usual, though all the branches are running up and down through Loki, as opposed to sideways like before. This new timeline weave together and branch off, resembling a tree, implying they all can finally coexist, resembling the tree of life, Yggdrasil, which is from Norse mythology. And God, it is so damn good. Mobius is tracking new He Who Remains variants, making sure they're kept at bay and they don't warrant the TVA. As he and B-15 are headed to the war room, he reveals he's leaving. He wants to return to his timeline and see what he's been working so hard to save. As he stands across the street from his Dawn's home in Ohio, Sylvie appears. They both agree it's weird to have Loki gone, and Sylvie says she doesn't know where she's off to just yet. Which we're going to see her again. There's no way we don't see her again in the MCU somewhere. Mobius decides to stay there and take it all in, at least for the moment. Meanwhile, OB has developed a new edition of the TVA handbook. In a flash of 19th century Chicago, no one is dropping one through young Victor Timely's window. The last interesting bit includes Renslayer, who is sent to the void. She wakes up in Elias's presence and takes in all her surroundings, but the eyebrow-raising part is when the wind brushes aside the grass to reveal a bronze insignia that says "for all time, always," much like the exact same one in the TVA. The episode ends with the camera panning through the millions of timeline branches to reveal Loki's face. While he's not quite smiling, he seems to be satisfied with his answers. Okay, so I'm going to Loki season 2 finale Easter eggs, because there are a good couple bit in here. That a bunch of your callbacks, like we were talking about. Okay, so Loki season 2 finale begins by running the Marvel Studio logo in reverse. I don't know if you cut onto that. A key plot device is from Doctor Strange, which is Dormammu. I've come to bargain, just turning back time and just essentially time slipping. So Loki calls back his pivotal line from the first Thor movie. As he's sitting there hanging out to the Bifrost, Loki, his dad asks him, "Why did you do this?" He said, "For all of us." And he says the same thing back to Mobius and Sylvie as he traps himself. They said, "Why are you doing this?" He said, "For you, for all of us," which was a ad-lib line from Tom Hiddleston from the first Thor movie, and he decided to bring it back and put this in the finale of the show. I see Loki dons a new outfit, nodding to Marvel Comics and his journey throughout the MCU, which I'd already told about the thing. Yggdrasil automated appearance. The finale suggests that the majority of Loki season 2 takes place before Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania. In the after segment of the finale, following Loki's heroics, move to settle on the timeline. TVA operating a new way with B-15 at the helm. I don't need all this editorializing nonsense. We're talking about He Who Remains variants. When B-15 asks if any of those variants know that that the TVA know they exist yet, Mobius responds, "Nope. I guess one of them caused a little bit of ruckus on 616 adjacent round, but they handled it, so we're all good now." Which was Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, okay. And then the last one, Ravonna Renslayer. I don't think that's the last we've seen of her either. So in the first multiversal war, we learn, I think it was in season 1, might have been beginning of season 2 or some point, but Ravonna tames Eliath, and that's how they won the multiversal war the first time. So everyone's speculating, okay, does Ravonna die to Eliath at the end of this? Or is she taming again, and this is what's starting the multiversal war again? Kind of time working backwards. So,
yeah.
Something to ponder. But like I said, look, this show is truly phenomenal, and it's one of those I could watch forever. Like after reading all this, I want to go back and rewatch the episode. I might do that tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So, 'cause damn man, what a solid thing. I do think it's it though. I don't think we're getting any more. Tom Hiddleston had an interview with BD from comicbook.com, and he asked him about it, all this. And he says, I think this is my 14-year journey of Loki coming to an end and tied, in a nice bow. We've seen him go through everything. He said, I think that's it. But I wager to guess in Secret Wars, we see our Thor meet up with this Loki and that Thor realizes what this Loki has done. And God, it's so good. His glorious purpose.
I think he has to come back in Secret Wars.
Yeah.
Right.
Even just for a brief little minute, because he can never leave this seat. Like, he can't ever leave it. Because he is the loom now. So for all the infinite of branches, he's the power. And if he leaves, they all die. So, which is trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions of lives. Unless
we've got another Thor movie coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it happens there.
Yeah, that could work. I feel like they would save it for like Armor Wars though, like keep it for like a big reveal, because it'll be that's gonna be like 6-7 years, I feel like, at this point from now.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh God, wouldn't that just be beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
But that's Loki, and it's Loki. It's your Invincible. It's your Doom Patrol. Listen, I'm good. I'm good now. But we still have one more thing to talk about, Chris. There's no releases. There's no releases this week, TV wise.
Oh.
It's Thanksgiving week. Everybody enjoy it, but watch good
football.
Aha! Right there with you, Chris.
Oh, right. Well, so you're sure there's something else to talk about? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we got something. There's something missing. I've got to update all my stuff now that that I've talked about it.
Yeah, we got the Marvels to talk about. So I'll run through the plot real quick, and then we'll give our thoughts.
And we are spoiler full because we are 2 weeks out removed from the movie. So
like how you recovered that. We're spoiler full.
I recovered it.
All right. We should say, by the way, before we get into this, that the box office so far has not been huge.
Dude, what's up with that?
I think it's been partially because they couldn't promote the film heading into it.
Yeah.
Everyone that's seen Aman Vellani promoting the film has absolutely
we've got Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Imani Vellani as Miss Marvel, right there. Like she is perfect, and even more so in this movie.
All right, so the plot: Carol Danvers defies the influence of the Supreme Intelligence and destroys it, which leads to a Kree civil war and the desolation of their home world, Hala. The conflict renders the planet barren as it loses its air, water, and sunlight. Dar-Ben, the new leader of the Kree, retrieves one of the quantum bands, of which Kamala Khan has the other half. Dar-Ben harnesses the power of the band to tear open a jump point in space. The resulting anomaly is discovered by SWORD. Meanwhile, Nick Fury, now residing at the Sabre space station, hosts peace talks between the Kree and the Skrulls. Monica Rambeau investigates the jump point anomaly near Sabre, while Danvers investigates the source where Dar-Ben found the quantum band. When Rambeau touches the anomaly, she, Danvers, and Kamala switch places through teleportation. The switching causes the three to fight each other's Kree enemies, leaving the Khan family home destroyed in their wake, which was a really
hilarious.
It was a funny bit. Because the whole family jumps in and starts fighting.
Which, we talked about it for the finale of Miss Marvel, that we hope that this family sticks around and stuff like that. They were a pretty decent portion of the movie, and I was very excited about it the whole time. I'm really glad they made the decision to do that.
That was fun. After the three women return to their original places, Fury and Rambeau visit Kamala on Earth, As Kamala eagerly demonstrates her powers, she switches places with Danvers. When Danvers flies away, she switches places with Kamala in mid-air. The group's
Dude, one of the funniest lines was Nick Fury going, "Oh, it's just Carol." At the
yeah,
scene, I was like, dude.
the group surmises their light-based powers are linked through quantum entanglement, and that they switch places when any of the three use their powers simultaneously. The three join up at a Skrull refugee colony on the planet Tarnax, where talks of resettlement have dissolved. Dar-Ben rips open another jump point, which siphons the atmosphere of Tarnax into Hala and restores its air. After a hasty effort to evacuate the colony, Danvers, Rambeau, and Kamala form a team informally referred to by Kamala as the Marvels. Danvers informs the others of the legend that the quantum bands had been used to create the jump point transportation network. The three became entangled due to their mutual contact with its energy when Dar-Ben disrupted it. Dar-Ben's repeated rupturing of jump points is causing instability to the network and endangering the entire universe. Dar-Ben reaches the water planet Aladna, where she tears open a jump point to draw the ocean water into Hala. Her final plan is to usurp Earth's sun to restore that of Hala. The Marvels fight and subdue Dar-Ben, but she steals Kamala's band and uses both bangles to tear open another hole in space. The act destroys Dar-Ben and leaves behind a rupture into the multiverse. After Kamala reclaims the bands, she and Danvers use their combined powers to energize Rambeau, allowing her to close the hole from the other side. Stranding her in the process, Danvers flies into Hala's sun and uses her power to restore it. Let's stop there.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about this. That's essentially that entire story wrapped up.
Yeah.
I thought the story was good. I thought it was interesting. We get a new villain.
Mm-hmm. A throwaway, if you will.
And it's...
But I understood her actions kind of thing. Like, I got it.
That one of the things I feel like Marvel has to do better with, you don't always have to kill the villain.
Correct.
You need them to come back. And you need to find a way for them to basically run away or be defeated, but they still remain a threat for future movies.
Correct.
It's like they dispatch their villains very easily.
Well, hell, after 47 projects, can't keep them all, I guess.
How many outside of Thanos and Loki have returned?
Baron Zemo is he's the only one that comes to mind, though.
Uh-huh.
But he came back in a TV show, so
yeah. Red Skull technically, but he was
again throwaway. Wasn't really
guarding the Soul Stone, so it's not like
wasn't really villainous.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
All right. You got anything else you want to say about that part of the story? I thought the CGI was good.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of the complaints I have Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever was the CGI, which I need to go back and rewatch that again. I know. But which we will beginning of next year at some point. I think the story was fine. I think it was great for what it was. The humor hit in a lot of spots. Like, they didn't use a lot of screaming goats to get some humor across. Although the tiny Flurkins were hilarious, and as soon as I saw them, I was like, okay, this is how we're going to solve this problem. I think it could have been a tad bit longer. We could have, like, some things were rushed, like in the middle scene where they go to the one planet, like with the wheat fields and everything, and like they just jumped to those conclusions. I was like, we could have stretched this out a little bit. It was an 1.5 hour movie, which is fine. A lot of people like the shorter aspect of it. An 1:45, I think, would have been perfect length for this because we would have tied some things up a little bit better. But overall, I mean, I gave this whole movie overall a 4. Like, I really did enjoy this movie. I do not believe the critics. I don't know how many times we have to say that on this show. Just don't believe the critics anymore. Go and form an opinion of yourself. If you like the MCU stuff, go watch this. This movie and Loki, because this came out the same day, reinvigorated my love for the MCU, especially Loki in this movie. And now, because actually, Chris Killian, we were talking before the match tonight, and he was like, oh, because we got to talk about the MCU, because I got to talk about the strike and stuff. He said, he said, did you ever feel the fatigue? I said, I really did. I said, a lot of the movies post Endgame have not hit with me, even some of the shows. I said, but the Loki and Loki and the Marvels really kind of reinvigorated it, and I'm back in, like, and I'm ready for it. I said, but that sucks though. We're getting Echo, sure, but the only movie we're getting next year is Deadpool 3. That's it.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
but with all the characters that we think we may get, it could work out.
Yeah, and I just hope I don't die before I get to see some of this stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that we kind of talked about it a little bit last night, where they were both dragging it out by introducing tons of new characters. But at the same time, they were giving us tons of properties. I mean, at the peak, we were getting 4 to 5 movies a year and 4 to 5 streaming shows. It was like every month you were getting either streaming or a movie.
Yep.
And it was just, that's fine I think especially if you're dropping the films in a reasonable time frame on a streaming service, that's okay. But if you're doing 5 films a year that you expect people to go to the theater to see,
say caught up on, and it's just not going to do it.
No. So I like that they've slowed down. Hopefully now they'll start weaving some of this stuff in. They're committing to certain things. Echo's going to be TVMA. Blade's going to have a rated R rating.
Whenever we eventually get it.
And I think part of that's the criticism they've been getting, that they're losing some of the audience to shows like The Boys and Invincible.
Yep, and we've talked about that between you and I as well, because like these, and even I think my brother was part of the conversation too, that we as an audience are growing with these and growing up with these shows and movies and stuff. Right. It's time, and we like that gritty, more realistic stuff. Like it doesn't all have to be not really kiddie, but limited and things like that.
Right. And the great thing about the MCU is they have that. That's where you introduce Daredevil and Hell's Kitchen,
Moon Knight, yeah, that kind of stuff.
Jessica Jones, bring that back. Yeah. But I gave this 4 stars as well. It's a very, very good film, and it's like you said, it could have been longer. I still don't know quite how I feel about the musical number, although I think it provided some nice comedy.
Yeah. Officially, it made her a Disney princess, though.
Yeah, she's officially Captain Marvel is now a Disney princess.
Which dress and musical number as well. That was, again, one of the funny lines, though, was the line delivery. I feel like they finally know exactly what they want to do with Captain Marvel. Like, even during Infinity War and Endgame and Captain Marvel, I don't feel like they knew what they wanted to do with the direction of the character. But this one, like, she was a little bit more standoffish at the beginning of the movie, and then was going with the team and was putting more of her personality out. But one of the funny lines, though, was technically her husband, and he stopped singing and was just talking normal. He says, yeah, duh, he's bilingual. I laughed. I loved it. It's just such a stupid throwaway line, but it was just so funny.
I have seen reports, I don't know how accurate, that Brie Larson has indicated she will be back as Captain Marvel. She knows the film or show that she's coming back for already, but she's not saying, which makes me think it's got to be decently close.
Yeah.
Because that means she's either already filmed it, which I don't know if she would have had time to with the strike.
Right.
Or she's already gotten the script.
Yeah, she's gotten the script and she knows what she's doing. I can see that. But that begs the question of what? So I'd have to sit down and look at all the properties coming up in the next year and a half or so. Because I don't even know what shows we've got coming. I know we've got Echo, but I don't remember what else we've got.
Yeah. So
let's get to it, Chris. Let's get to the post-credit scenes.
Well, and one of these is not even in the credits. It wraps up the movie proper. Yes. And that is The short-lived team-up inspires Kamala to seek out other heroes and form a new group, starting with Kate Bishop.
Finally. It's been a year.
We've been missing Haley Steinfeld.
And Lucky.
She's back. And Lucky. Can't forget Lucky.
Can't count Lucky, the one-eyed dog, out.
No. It was cool the way they did it. They shot to, we're inside a room, and we see the door backlit. We see a shadow come up. You see the top of an archer's bow.
Mm-hmm.
And then they cut to the door open. You know, the door opens or starts to, and then they cut and show Lucky run in, and you could hear people reacting in the theater.
So Zach and I were losing it. Zach more so than me. But, like, because they've been teasing this the whole time. Like, I feel like since Endgame, they've been teasing this.
Yeah.
And, God, it's so beautiful.
Oh, here we are. Haley Steinfeld walks into the room. It's Kate Bishop. And Kamala just says, hey, I want to start a team.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to be a part of it. She says a team of teenage superheroes.
Yeah.
And Kate's like, you know I'm 23, right?
Yeah, it was so good.
But this is presumably the start of Young Avengers.
Well, and she even said, she goes, hey, did you know Ant-Man's got a daughter? It's just, again, what is little like, Imani is perfect. Like, she stole this movie just like she stole the Miss Marvel show. And with her in the MCU, I'm down. I'm all for it.
She has a fan's enthusiasm that she even brings to the actual character she's played. It's not just that she's excited to talk about it off screen. You see it in her performance.
Yes.
Like, she's freaking out throughout the Marvels movie because she's like, oh God, you're Captain Marvel.
Yeah. And you know that's Imani playing Imani as Miss Marvel. That's what that is. And it's so good.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to the question is, who do we actually get? I think some of the hints aren't gonna fall. Like, I don't know that Kid Loki ends up being part of the team.
I don't think Kid Loki ended along that lines as well. I don't think Thor's adoptive child either will be. I think down the road, sure, they're setting that up, but I don't think as a part of like this initial team. Obviously, Stature. So we'll have Stature, Miss Marvel, and
what about
Hawkeye?
What about Miles Morales?
See, that's where I come into question. Do we bring Spider-Man in as a quote-unquote leader to kind of set it all up and have that hole with Imani Vellani? No, Black Widow's part of Thunderbolt, so that's not going to pan out. But, like, because you have to have some other characters, like more mature characters that I think is going to play well with this. And Spider-Man, like Miles Morales, is a part of Young Avengers, but we have not been introduced to him yet. So
in the MCU. So
depends if Sony lets them have that character. So
yeah,
they've been playing so far.
At this point, if you're Disney, you just write the check, or better yet, just buy Sony.
God, why not? And then, like, if they bought Sony, we're done. We're set for life. I mean, decades and decades of work. But
yeah.
And speaking of decades of work.
Speaking of.
And Disney acquisitions.
There is not a post-credit in this film. If you haven't seen it yet and you went ahead and listened to the spoilers, there's not a post-credit. So after the mid-credit scene, you're free to leave the theater. But in the mid-credit scene, Monica Rambeau awakens. She's in a bed. She looks over. She sees her mother. And she starts to freak out because she's apologizing to her mom, and I'm so sorry I wasn't there, because remember, Monica got blipped.
All the way in 2020 in WandaVision.
Yeah, and boy, has it been that long?
Mm-hmm. Been 3 years. Almost 4.
So Maria, who we believe to be Maria, kind of looks at her and is like, I don't know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. I don't know who you are.
I don't have any kids.
And I don't have any kids. And so she looks confused, and then I think we catch a glimpse of a coat kind of walk by, and then you hear the voice first.
Well, you see a little bit of blue. Like you see the lab coat, and it's just blue. Yeah, and this is when I started freaking out.
You hear the voice of Kelsey Grammer
Mm-hmm.
as Beast, and they cut, and there's Beast wearing the lab coat. Now this was CGI.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming they either couldn't get Kelsey Grammer in to do
Right.
a physical, or he didn't want to go through all that makeup for that short of a scene. Maybe, um, maybe it had something to do, or maybe they just didn't want to tip their hand and just had him do the voice work so that he
Oh, so
didn't
you could
appear on
hide it
set.
easier. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
call.
But they cut to him, and he mentions that Charles wants an update. So
Mm-hmm.
we've got a second Charles Xavier mention in the MCU. The first being back in Multiverse of Madness when we saw him on screen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's revealed Maria in this particular universe is binary.
Yep.
So we've now got Monica with the Fox version of the X-Men,
Yep.
essentially. Um, this gets interesting. Now, how long does it take them to pay that off?
That's the question. Because I mean,
That,
they bought Fox. I feel like 5 years ago at this point.
but this is what we've been running into lately with the MCU is they'll do something like this, and everyone gets just
Mm-hmm.
completely thrilled about it, and then we don't see an update of any kind for 3, 4, 5 years. They
Doesn't even get
can't
followed
keep
up on.
they can't keep doing that.
No, they're gonna have to come up with a better plan. I get it. I get the pandemic being a thing, but we're out of it now. But now we have to deal with the strike, which is what we're gonna feel that effect next year, unfortunately. Like across all movies, not just the MCU. Some Easter eggs I got for you though. We did see Valkyrie in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
They got a pretty good pop out of our theater.
Yeah,
The Annihilator name drop. That is it's a team with because Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel is called the Annihilator for like halfway through it. A lot of people say,
Annihilator of Worlds.
yeah, and this is a call to a comic book team that is with Beta Ray Bill, Silver Surfer, Icon, and Gladiator. They're saying it's a potential another tease to Beta Ray Bill because back in Thor, this most recent one, there was another like pass to him. So we'll see. Miss Marvel's quantum bands. They go to say this is on Game Rant, by the way. The quantum bands draw their energy from the mysterious quantum zone, which is more than likely the MCU's quantum realm. It just shows further connection between the MCU and the comics. And then we did talk about Beast, Kate Bishop, and the Liberty Avenger was in here with from Spider-Man, and then Maria Rambeau as binary. So,
Gonna be good.
what a time!
And we'll have a lot more conversation
Yes,
about the future of the MCU next week.
yes,
But
because there's a lot of there's some casting news that's come out this week
yes,
that
yes.
I can't wait to talk more about you with. So, all right, hour
Cool.
and 50
Let
minutes of
me,
a show.
That's it. That's all. Really?
That's it.
Let's go for double time.
Jesus, yeah, I gotta go to bed. I'm already way up past my bedtime, but the
So
show
next week-
must go on.
Next week we'll have a lot of movie discussion with news, and we're gonna also, by the way, rank our horror movies that we watched this year.
Finally.
I've still got my list. Real quick before we go, before we get to the releases next week for films, do want to mention because we dove right into the Marvels. I watched this week Totally Killer and The Omen 2 and 3. Totally Killer is a definite watch. Check it out. I gave
That's
that.
one of the new ones, right?
Yeah, it's a new one. It's kind of a mixture of Back to the Future and a horror movie slasher. It's kind of cool. Like it involves time travel and all that good stuff. So
Speaking of, we cannot forget to put Thanksgiving on our Halloween horror list for next year. It is they're calling it one of the better new franchise slasher films. I saw a trailer for it the other day. I was like, it looks decent. So
give it a shot. Why not? Next week, releasing Wish in cinemas November 22nd, which looks like a pretty good film. animated, if you haven't heard about it. And one I really want to see at
Mm-hmm.
some point. Also, that same day, Napoleon, starring Joaquin Phoenix.
I wonder if that'll get an
What's
Oscar nod.
I don't know what the timeline is.
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't know
what's
if
the
it's
cutoff?
I don't know if it's coming out soon enough or.
It's the cutoff for Oscars. Oscar
But
nominations.
the we got a lot coming up. I'm interested in next week's show, especially because we're going to have a lot more discussion than recap.
Oscar nomination cutoff was yesterday, the 18th.
Oh, so it won't make it.
No. Well, okay. That
Be
comes
an
from
early,
variety.
be an early favorite for next year's,
Mm-hmm.
2025 Oscars.
God, that's nuts. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is a huge episode. We're caught up on all of our shows. We are. Do not forget to have a great Thanksgiving and holiday weekend. We are going to return with 4 episodes of the Santa Clauses, season 2, and then 1 more episode of Invincible. We're going to catch up on all the news that I'm sure you've been waiting for us to talk about. We're also going to rank our horror movies. And am I forgetting anything else? I think that wraps us up for the week. We gotta be another big show next week.
Happy Turkey Day.
Yes.
And if you're vegan, happy cranberry sauce day.
Works. It works.
Whatever.
So, but ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to share it on all your favorite social media platforms. You know the whole thing. Threads we're starting to use a little bit more of. Really enjoying that. But again, don't forget to share this show out. Let us know what you thought. The Marvels in the comments down below. Let us know what you think of Loki down in the comments down below, as well as Doom Patrol, of course, the best show. One of the best shows out there. But ladies and gentlemen, as always, that has been this week's episode of the Nerdwide Podcast. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you for Christmas time after that.
Later, guys.